Title work is, I imagine, highly relationship driven. How has BNI helped you expand or deepen those connections?
The core of what I do is having a network of people that I know in this community, because a lot of times when you're out shopping for a house with your favorite real estate agent and you bind a contract, then the next step is, where is this going to close? And a lot of times the ultimate buyer or seller doesn't know anyone in the community that does what I do. So relationships just never need to stop growing, because that's a large source of where I get my business from.
You also serve as the assistant city prosecutor every Wednesday. So that position kind of gives you a front row seat to human behavior potentially under pressure. What surprised you most about that work, good or bad?
The answer to that question probably has to be, how many people don't care about their own situation. I genuinely expected that there would be more people who would show up, maybe apologetic, or just, with their actions corrected. Maybe they didn't have their registration in place and they would show up to court with it corrected. And it's a little bit unbelievable how many people just don't correct what the things they've been cited for, and they just want to pay and move on and continue to operate with all of those things in disarray in their life, which is anti everything that's inside of me.
Welcome to the Perfect 100, the podcast for BNI members who want to maximize their membership, deepen their impact, and grow their business through intentional networking. I'm your host, Tammy Zurak, a CliftonStrengths coach, longtime BNI leader, and one of the few members worldwide to maintain a perfect Power of One score. Each week, we'll explore the habits, mindsets, and everyday strategies of BNI members who are turning their membership into momentum. Hello, and welcome back to the Perfect 100. Today's guest is someone who's as well known for his perfect hair as he is for his professionalism. Reese is a title attorney serving clients across Tennessee and Mississippi, and he's also the assistant city prosecutor for the city of Germantown. He's deeply rooted in the community, known for his approachable personality and bringing clarity to even the most complicated real estate or legal situations. He's married, a father of 4 boys, and still somehow finds time to give back, serve, and make people laugh, all while keeping his hair camera ready. Hello, Reese. Welcome to the show.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, I had to get the hair thing in there because all transparency, Reese is in my chapter. So there's a lot of behind the scenes jokes. You know how they are in your chapter. All right. So we are going to start off with a 45 seconds so you can tell everybody a little bit about you.
All right. Well, good morning. My name is Rees Hodges, and I'm a closing attorney in Germantown, Tennessee, and I hold the title attorney seat in my local chapter, BNI East Memphis. And that means that I handle residential and commercial real estate transactions. So what you're going to want to use me for is making sure that title passes free and clear between parties that are buying and selling real property. We handle everything from making sure parties aren't in bankruptcy to making sure all liens are paid, taxes are satisfied, and basically that the buyer gets an insurable piece of title that they can own free and clear outright of anything prior in time before them.
Awesome. All right. So you're a title attorney whose reputation and professionalism build trust, 2 qualities that deeply matter, I'm sure, in your line of work. What does your role look like? Because I don't know everybody knows what a title attorney does. So what does your day-to-day look like? What do you get satisfaction out of doing in your job?
Well, my day to day, man, there's a lot of things that happen in a day, so that's a loaded question. But a lot of what I do is behind the scenes work, making sure, kind of like what I was speaking to in my 45 second. But when we get a contract to do a closing on a piece of property, we order a title search and we check to see that the person who's purporting to sell the property actually owns it. That they have enough equity in the property to pay off any liens. We want to make sure these people that are selling, or these companies that are selling, don't have judgments, that they don't owe any back taxes, federal tax liens. There's a slew of things that are checked when we do a title search. So a lot of my behind the scenes work is clearing those types of matters, and making sure that the buyer is of course getting clear title But day to day in my office, I'm also handling the table closing. So I'm sitting down with you at a closing, and I'm making sure that you understand what you're signing, that we go over all the numbers, and that everything is as expected, and that I'm kind of like a last stop to answer any final questions that somebody may have regarding the transaction that's in front of them.
Awesome. I know that I remember that being a very lengthy process when I bought my house, is sitting and just signing 1,000 sheets of paper, which was both exciting and frustrating at the same time because it was the first house I bought, but it was also like, wow, there's a lot of paper here to sign.
It's a lot for sure.
Yeah. So you also work with your dad in your business, which I'm sure adds another layer of maybe complexion, or not complexion, but can be maybe challenging or not. I don't know. Tell us, is that if you work in your family business or with family in your business, I know that can be a challenge sometimes. Is that, how do you guys get along?
Well, we get along great at work. We've pretty much mastered being able to separate, work feelings from personal and family feelings. Because work has to happen, things have to get done. So sometimes we'll bark an order back and forth at each other to make sure that we're moving along. But that doesn't change the fact that we're father and son, and occasionally he'll stick his head in the door and ask about a football game this weekend. He wants to make sure he's got the time straight so he can show up. And there's always that balance of family matters versus work matters. But we get along really well, and it's nice that you have someone that you're related to, that you can trust, that you can ask questions to. Anytime you don't know something, it's very very easy to just get a straight answer from somebody that is your dad. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know that, I could work with my dad. That would be an interesting mix. I think we're very similar, so I think that we would butt heads too much. Have you learned anything that, of interest, that just working together with him, that you enjoy?
well, I will say we have learned where we differ with our personalities. We both have some strong suits. I'm a very naturally patient person. Anytime we have maybe someone who's upset about something that's out of our control, uh, there are there are definitely times where I get put in that situation because I'm better at maybe calming someone down or getting things back to where they need to be. Whereas if we need somebody to be headstrong and tell him how it is, he's capable of letting somebody know this is how it's going to be, and there's no way to change that.
Right.
And so we both have our strong suits and how we handle certain situations for sure.
So you're a good compliment, that's a great thing.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So your work touches a lot of milestones, buying and selling a home being a big one, obviously. How do you help your clients feel comfortable and confident that what can be a heavy situation emotionally is going to be okay for them?
Well, I try to make everything relatable to, day to day life. Anytime we're going through the documents at the closing table, a lot of times people get overwhelmed with the amount of paperwork that they have to sign, all the numbers, and I always try to bring it back down to we all have to have a place to live. We have to have a roof over our head. This is a transaction where you're taking title. Yes, it's a big deal, but you're also putting equity into your home. And it's definitely more beneficial to them to be doing it that way versus paying rent, which is something that most everyone's comfortable with. So I try to bring it full circle and remove a little bit of the emotion out of it and just say this is to benefit you at the end of the day. You've come this far. Don't let the final stretch scare you out of it.
Yeah. And I know, just because I know obviously we're in the same chapter, communication is strong for you. Has that been something that you have always had, or is it something you've developed in what you've been doing, what you do through work?
I think communication is something that I have always had as a quality. It's when I was a little kid, I would prefer to sit down and speak with adults over speaking with peers that were my own age. There's just communicating and learning has always been something that just comes very naturally to me.
Love that. I used to like to my parents used to do a lot of entertaining, and I used to always sit with and wanna talk to them too. I think all my parents' friends always thought I was older than I was because I could carry on a conversation because I wasn't scared to talk to them. So, I love how that plays out later for you in life, becoming an attorney, obviously communication is necessary, so that's cool that that started when you were younger. So talk to me about BNI. What first brought you to BNI, and what did you think it would do for your what did you hope it would do for your business?
Well, I got a phone call. I was standing at a baseball field for one of my sons here in Germantown, and I got a phone call asking if I would be interested in a networking group to try to, grow and build my business and connect with new people. And just by default, that is the very core of how I get business is networking and meeting people. So I, of course, jumped at the opportunity. That was my initial ask, if you will. That's how I got on board. And then from there, I just started meeting new people and, learning the value of this networking group.
So this chapter, this was your first for you didn't know about BNI prior to?
I did know about BNI prior. I had a brief run-in with a BNI chapter at the very beginning of my career. It was very short-lived. It was something that, let's just say I stuck my head in the door a handful of times, but it never really stuck. And it was in a different state. It wasn't even here locally. It was in Mississippi. Well, it was local in the Memphis area, but it was in Mississippi, and it wasn't the right time for me to be going to Mississippi at 7 o'clock in the morning. We had a couple of small children. So
Yeah.
it didn't really work out. And I never really got the full benefit or value of what BNI was. I'm at a different point in my life now where I can reassess and kind of reevaluate and give, more time to BNI to get the full value out of it.
Gotcha. I like how you put that, a run-in. Yeah. Like, maybe it wasn't the right chapter potentially, at the time either.
That's
So title work is, I imagine, highly relationship, driven. How has BNI helped you expand or deepen those connections?
Well, I mean, like I just said, at the core of what I do is having a network of people that I know in this community because a lot of times when you're out shopping for a house with your favorite real estate agent and you bind a contract, then the next step is where is this going to close? And a lot of times the ultimate buyer or seller doesn't know anyone in the community that does what I do. So it's up to that relationship between myself and the real estate agent, or even myself and the loan originator. If the buyer is getting a loan, a lot of times the lender will have a connection with a local office, and so those relationships just never need to stop growing because that's a large source of where I get my business from.
Yeah, well, and being that there's a never-ending supply, it seems, of realtors coming and going through, over time, getting to know them all, I imagine would be fairly challenging, and staying front of mind for people, can
Yes.
also, where BNI can be a big benefit, I would imagine. So, all right, well, let's roll over to your power of one. Let's see how we're doing there. So I'm going to go from just read from left to right here. And this is the most recent report. So you have a total score of 65 in the yellow. Your attendance, you have 15 points. Your referrals per week, you have 15 points in the yellow. Visitors per week, you have 0 points in the gray. One-to-ones, you have yellow, 15 points in the yellow, and CEUs per week, you have 20 points in the green. And we'll just roll on down to your Palms report is also up. So this is a total of 26 meetings. You have 23 absences with 3 subs. Referrals given inside 7. Referrals given outside 15. Referrals received inside 3. Referrals received outside 49. Visitors 0. One-to-ones 21. Thank you for closed business. Let's see if I can see that. 16,086 and CEUs 26. So, what are your impressions of yourself?
That's a lot of information, for
Right?
starters. I will say that, several months back, I was lower than I am now. I briefly bumped up and went into the green. I'll have to reevaluate why I went to 65. But overall, I mean, I will say I'm pleased. I definitely see and know that I have room for improvement in certain areas, but overall, I'm pleased with where I am. I mean, it is a commitment, and no one's perfect. So
Right.
it's always a struggle to make sure you're trying to take care of every single aspect of all the things that are
Check all the boxes everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, you're only 5 points from green, so 70 is, green and you're at 65, and, I know, again, because 'cause I'm in your chapter, you've come a long way, and, that's something that, our chapter it pays attention to, so we want everybody to be successful, and how you're successful is to, get yourself into yellow at a minimum, so, I'm amazed by the referrals received. Is that a lot of the, because you 49 in 26 weeks, 49 received outside and then 3 more, so 50 some. So are you happy with that? Is that, it sounds like a good number.
Absolutely. And again, a lot of that's going to come from our real estate agent. Anytime there's a buyer or a seller closing a transaction. And also, we got Ronnie in our chapter with Orion, and he's originating loans. So, he's had a few transactions that he's been able to send over to my office. So, a very large majority of those referrals have come from those two seats. But there's also the connection with Jonathan and his, financial planning. And a lot of times he'll have a client who doesn't have a last will and testament, and he'll send them my way because we don't currently have anybody in our chapter that can handle that. So,
Right.
and I can also handle small, simple estate planning. So that's another large source of those referrals. But yes, I'm very happy.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're part of, well, you're benefiting from what we call the firm. So finance, insurance, real estate, and mortgage. Those are the 4 seats that most chapters start with. Those 4 seats. The realtor being kind of the crux of everything. So our chapter's currently in on the hunt for the correct realtor. So it's been a fun couple of weeks because we're taking applications. Because if you're listening to this and you're in a BNI chapter, the realtor is probably the hottest seat. Because usually once they're in, they unless their job changes, which is what's happened to ours, then it's someplace you don't want to leave. So we've had a whole slew of realtors come through our doors, and looking for the right one's been an interesting time, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So, how do you see how structure and rhythm in BNI really work when people follow the process? What do you think that kind of predictability does to help a small business owner succeed?
I mean, I think it goes without saying, but you have to have structure and rhythm and repetition, and you have to have systems in place to succeed, especially in the business that I'm in. I
Yes.
mean, we have a tried and true system from A to Z, from the moment we get a contract in this door to the deed being recorded and the title policy being issued at the end of the transaction. We have a system set up, and everybody in this office plays a huge role in getting all of those processes, completed so that everything stays on track. So you have to have that. There's no way to not.
Join the Art Academy in Memphis. Master the skills needed to create stunning, realistic oil paintings. With expert instruction, you'll refine your craft. Enroll today at artacademyofmemphis.com. Yeah, and that might have been a loaded question because I know you're all about systems and processes. So let's roll over to your Clifton strengths and show what those are. All right. So your number 1 is woo. You love meeting new people and winning them over. You enjoy socializing and making connections. Your number 2 is consistency. You are keenly aware of the need to treat people the same. You crave stable routines and clear rules and procedures that everyone can follow. Your number 3 is communication. You generally find it easy to put your thoughts into words. You are a good conversationalist and presenter. Your number 4 is harmony. You look for consensus. You have no use for unnecessary friction and guide others toward practical solutions. And your number 5 is achiever. You work hard and possess a great deal of stamina. You take immense satisfaction in being busy and productive. So, what was your first reaction when you read your report?
Um, this is me.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
Nailed it as usual, I guess is the way.
Correct. Correct.
Did anything stand out to you when you read through it that was something that maybe just caught your attention?
I mean, honestly, it's fascinating how much like me these 5, strengths really are.
Right.
And I think they're even in the proper order. It's I'll tell you one thing that caught my attention was when I was reading about there's a little blurb about each one and what it entails. And under achiever, it says you feel as if each day starts at 0, and every day when I wake up, it's a new day. I don't ever wake up angry. I don't know how to explain that. It's just
Yeah.
every day is a fresh start for me, and it's usually something that happens during the day if I end up getting agitated that makes me feel that way. But I'm always ready to start and conquer a new day when I wake up in the morning. It's just like a reset for me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and it was interesting because all the things you just said, you have a very specific process and to make sure everything is done properly. I was curious how much of that was you. Was that, did that exist before you were doing that and you were just kind of carrying it on, or were you definitely in there kind of tweaking things to make it better?
There are definitely processes that existed prior to me being here, and doing this. But yes, every day is there's always something that in my mind at least where I'm saying, okay, we need to adjust how we're doing X to make it smoother down the road.
Right.
You're always perfecting those processes for sure.
Yeah, well, consistency and harmony together add a steady, fair, and calming energy, which are both important traits working in title work and in the courtroom because you're also a district assistant district attorney. So, how do those strengths influence how you handle conflict or pressure, would you say?
I have a lot of patience. Pressure is typically not something that crawls under my skin too much. Conflict, I definitely try to avoid it. I try to resolve it if it's presented to me. And by the very nature of the job, there's conflict in a courtroom because things are happening that shouldn't be. So, we're having to sort through that and figure out how to address it and how to handle it. But overall, I think that my strengths balance my ability to be able to do that job efficiently because of the fact that I will try to eliminate the conflict. We'll try to get to a resolution where it's fair and equitable for all parties.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. And woo and communication also together make you a natural connector. People tend to feel at ease around you, is typically what those bring. So, how do those show up in how you build trust with clients or maybe referral partners, even?
I try to be as genuine and just myself as I can be when I'm around people. So I think a lot of that just happens organically when I meet people. I'm not, I always say I'm not putting on a show. One of the things I'll tell a real estate agent when I meet them for the first time is I'm going to be the same guy that you see at the office if you close a transaction with me. I'm not going to change because I'm here trying to speak to you tonight or today. What you get in the office is the same thing you're going to get out here. So
Yeah. Well, in conversations we had, you described yourself as a bit of a chronic people pleaser. And after looking at your strengths, especially harmony, woo, and consistency, that makes a lot of sense. How do you see those strengths showing up when you're trying to keep everybody happy? And how do you balance when you have to make tough calls to move things forward?
oh man, I mean, making tough calls is definitely something I can do. I don't love to do it, but you know when when you're in a position like I am and you run a small business, you have to make decisions about things, and sometimes those decisions come from a gut feeling, and sometimes you just take all the information that's presented to you and you make the best possible decision that you can with what you got. But there's no perfect answer to how to address that. You kind of have to each one of those you deal with as it comes.
Right. Yeah. Well, you have two influencing themes, you have two executing themes, and you have one relationship building theme in your top five. So that's a good balance of opportunities to kind of meet people where they are. When I looked at your report, I was thinking to myself, you and I need to team up because you're the opposite of me. I have achievers in my top 10, but the rest of yours, communications is in the teens, but the rest are in the 20s or maybe 30s. So that I like to look for people. I always tell people when I have to take on a new assignment where there's a lot of change that needs to happen, then I look for people like you because you have those abilities to kind of cut through and meet people in a way, when I'm upsetting the apple cart, you're behind, making sure everybody's okay and understanding what's happening. So,
And a lot of that rolls over into, exactly what I do, which is I've got a title issue and I'm trying to resolve it and keep everyone happy and keep everything moving forward. There are definitely people in my office that will bring me the information that might upset the apple cart, and
right.
then it's my job to put it back together.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, and, we all seem to land eventually in the thing that we're great at, and it's why I like doing these interviews is you can see that, when and reason I talked, before the interview, I was saying, when you were attuned to watching TV and seeing people in courtrooms, you have a picture in your head of a very dramatic scene, and I said to him, I was picturing him in that. I was having a hard time picturing him doing that, but then when I see what his strengths are, it makes complete sense, because he's able to see past all the things and get things accomplished. He's got achiever, but he also is looking to he wants to talk it through and make sure everybody's comfortable, is what I read, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And achiever also means you thrive on productivity and forward motion. So how do you balance that drive with patience for your profession? Because sometimes you are not able to do that.
Well, I mean, I'm always looking to get something done every single day, whether it's something small, whether it's something large. But I always have whether it's a mental list or a handwritten list, I have both, but I'm always looking to achieve and get something done every single day. I almost don't feel complete if I don't have some task that I can check off every single day.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I do have to just balance, work and life. And some of those achievements are not even work related. Some of
Right.
those are, maybe I cleaned out a room at home or I made it to my kid's game on time and I wasn't late or, who knows what it may
Yes.
be, but just something.
Yeah, well, and I have that achiever means I work every day, whether it's a weekend or not. It's, work. I don't mind working on the weekend because it's achieving, right? I'm getting something accomplished. I'm moving something forward. So that's the unfortunate people that are married to achievers sometimes have a hard time with, okay, sometimes you just got to stop working and stop checking off the list. um,
Right.
so when you look at your top 5, what do you think has grown the most? What might you have be using more in BNI than you would have thought? Or, you just see it growing because you're in BNI?
I mean, that's a toss up between woo and communication. Meeting new people is BNI. You come to these chapter meetings and there's visitors, there's guests, there might be a substitute. So there's always an opportunity to meet new people, which I don't necessarily find challenging, but it's also personally, I wanna go meet these people, I wanna find out
Yes.
who they are, and there's never enough time to meet them all.
Right.
Uh, and the other is probably communication because at the very core of what we do, we have to be able to communicate with one another and make sure everyone in the chapter knows what each other's businesses are and what they do and where we excel. So communication is also really key, and I've learned a lot, through the BNI chapter with how to use communication skills.
Well, and I know that I don't know if we're lucky. I will say we're, lucky's not the right word. We're in a chapter where we always have visitors. Pretty much every week there's somebody new, and you said we run out of time to talk to them all, and that's a typical woo um, conversation. There are some people that Jonathan, actually, our financial advisor, I did an interview. He did one of the podcast episodes a while back, and he struggles to go and talk to new people. That is not his thing. So, it's funny how each of us, our strengths drive what we're interested in. And that is something that a woo person would say is there's never enough time to meet all the people because you can't win them over if you don't get a chance to talk to them. Right. So,
Right, you cannot.
so I love that. All right. So let's change gears a little bit. You also serve as the assistant city prosecutor every Wednesday, which is a very different side of your legal work. So, what kind of cases do you typically see, and what drew you to take on that role?
So there are a lot of driving cases that happen, just speeding tickets, a lot of drivers on suspended licenses. So those are, in the state of Tennessee, driving on a suspended license is a Class B misdemeanor, which means that it's technically an arrestable offense. But there's definitely a handful of those. There's some domestic situations that come through Germantown. There's a variety, but what led me to take on that role is honestly being involved in a courtroom. My real estate practice is enjoyable, and I love it, and I get a whole lot of satisfaction out of it. However, it doesn't put me in a courtroom. So I was a little bit disconnected from other attorneys in the community, in the legal world, and I wanted to reconnect, and that's why I took the role, really.
Yeah, well, and that sounds like all the things you enjoy doing, right? From your strengths is you don't want to you sit in your office all day and not talk to people. You like to, the variety of talking to other people and using an achiever likes to achieve things. So that's one more thing to do in the day, right? Um,
Definitely.
so that position kind of gives you a front row seat to human behavior potentially under pressure. What surprised you most about that work, good or bad?
The answer to that question probably has to be how many people don't care about their own situation. I genuinely expected that there would be more people who would show up, maybe apologetic or just, with their actions corrected. Maybe they didn't have their registration in place and they would show up to court with it corrected. And it's a little bit unbelievable how many people just don't correct what the things they've been cited for, and they just want to pay and move on and continue to operate with all of those things in disarray in their life, which is anti everything that's inside of me. I want everything buttoned up and fixed. So
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and I moved here from up north. We're in the mid South for those of you not listening in the area. And one of the things I was most surprised about was the driving. It is, but and I lived in Washington D.C. for 6 months, and that's the second worst traffic I think in the U.S. But the skill level of driving here, it doesn't seem to be. What's the right way to put it? Well, I mean, when my stepson went to drive, we sent him to driving school because it's not required here. So I was also shocked by that as I had to take driver's ed as a school class, in order to get my driver's license. And that isn't something your lack of what you're citing there, the lack of care seems to be abundant amongst drivers here. And I don't know how you fix that, but it's a little scary to get behind the wheel of your car sometimes.
it is, yeah. The driving skills in the Memphis metro area may not be as refined as they are in other places. So
Yes, refined is a good word. How has your experience doing that changed how you see justice or fairness, or even how you approach people day to day now that you have that sort of purview?
yeah, I don't know that it's changed how I view that, but I do try to handle everyone, with fairness. That's innate in who I am as a person. So I'm always going to listen to your story. I'm always going to see what happened and get your side of things. But at the same time, rules are rules, and they need to be followed. So every story is kind of unfolds in front of me, and then I get to make a decision in a lot of in a lot of situations about what happens with the case, and I just have to base my decision off of the facts and off of the story that I'm being told as it presents itself.
Staying ahead in a world driven by technology is key. At Wisdom Integrators, we don't just solve problems, we create opportunities. Wisdom Integrators, connecting your world, solving your problems.
Okay. Yeah, I got selected for jury duty. I don't know, it's been 4 or 5 years ago now, and I got picked for the grand jury, which I was not. It was both not fun and fun at the same time because it kind of like I guess what you see on your weekly basis is a whole variety of different things. In grand jury, you get to sit through all these different cases, and the attorneys tell you what you need to know, and people come in and it was kind of interesting. Fortunately, I was an alternate, so I didn't have to stay because the people that did get picked for had to stay for like 2 weeks.
Right.
So I was kind of happy not to.
And it's not everything that TV makes it appear, right?
Right. No, not at all. It wasn't at all, you have this big, visions of grandeur in your head from watching TV, and it wasn't anything like that. It was an eye-opening experience. So the contrast between real estate closings and courtroom cases is pretty big. What do you take from each role that makes the other better?
Oh, wow. What do I take from each role that makes the other better? So
Yeah.
I will say that court is very efficient. So, you know, there are times when I will think about how efficiently the process runs so that everybody gets in and gets out and their cases get handled timely. And I'll take that efficiency and I'll say, how can I apply maybe something that we're doing courtroom wise at my office to make our processes more efficient? So that's going to be a trait I could pull from court. And then, you know, with regard to what I could pull from my office and apply it at court, I mean, I don't know that there's a good answer for that because there's definitely processes that we have, but they just don't really relate to the processes that are in court. It's just it's a
Yeah.
different ball game happen.
Okay.
So,
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. And how do you recharge after a day? We had talked about your Wednesdays. We have chapter meeting on Wednesday, and then you're doing your regular title closings and all that, and then you're off to court to hear everybody's stuff. That's a lot of balancing, and then you have a whole family at home as well, and you've got 4 boys or you have
four
4 kids.
four
Are they
boys.
all 4 boys? Yeah. So that's a lot going on in a day. So how do you recharge when after all of that?
Well, sleep is the number one answer there. I will say that I've always been a heavy sleeper, so I have to make sure I allow for that. And there's no way to skirt around it. You have to get in the bed and go to sleep and let your body take its natural course. So I sleep probably 8 to 9 hours every night.
Okay, that's awesome. I aspire to that.
I have to make it happen though. It doesn't happen organically. There's always something else I could be doing, speaking of the super strength. But sometimes you have to just manually shut that off and say, it's time to go to bed so that you can function tomorrow and do it again.
Yeah. You might have, you only have your top 5. If you unlock the rest, you might have discipline in your, in the
Uh,
rest
yeah,
somewhere, because
probably.
that definitely is a discipline thing where, because I try to get 7, and that sometimes is a struggle, to force myself to, okay, it's time to go to sleep now, and, not screens. And I was actually just reading, Atomic, habits, and how you can make things like that happen by setting yourself up for success by, kind of preloading things that you have to read the book, but sleep was one of the things where it's like if you want to watch TV, take the TV out of the room. If you want to look at your phone, have someone else lock the phone in a different room. All the things that stop us from doing what we should be doing because we have a day tomorrow. So.
That's right.
Um, so you've lived in Germantown your whole life. Sounds like you're deeply rooted in the community. What does that sense of local pride mean to you, and how does it influence how you serve your clients?
It means a lot to me, and it definitely influences how I serve my clients because, you know, again, because I grew up here, there's just so much that I know about this community, and I know where things are, how they operate. I know things about neighborhoods, and I can relay a lot of that information to my clients when we're in a closing. So I always try to make things relatable. I've lived in a lot of neighborhoods in Germantown growing up, and there's I do feel like I have a lot to offer, but with regard to just my knowledge of the area in general. But it's what remind me the other part of your question?
How does it influence how you serve your clients, and what does local pride mean to you?
Local, that was the second part. Local means to me probably, just staying involved in the community. I serve on a couple of boards locally on the Germantown Education Foundation. And also there's a Cancer Kickers soccer club that I've recently joined the board for. And I just try to stay involved in the community and finding ways to give back to the community that helped form me and shape me into who I am today.
That's awesome. Love that. From your perspective, if you think about, because you work in a team at your office, and I imagine a courtroom is a bit like a team, and then you're also on a team in BNI, what separates a good one from a great one?
Probably leadership. Leadership has a lot to do with a team. Somebody has to be in charge and giving orders, and other parties involved have to be able to accept those orders and carry them to fruition. Not everybody on a team is a team player, as we've probably all experienced at some point in our life. But definitely having a strong leader who's able to dictate what needs to happen and relay that with grace, but also with importance, so that the tasks actually get accomplished.
How do you feel like that plays out in a BNI chapter?
Very well. The president leads the meeting, and it's no secret that our chapter has a bell to keep everyone on schedule, and it's good. We would run over if we didn't have the
Yeah.
structure that we have and the leadership that we have to move us along and keep us on track.
Yeah, and being the bell ringer, which is why I laughed when you said that, because I get grief for ringing the bell, but we actually had a visitor stand up last week and say the thing they liked most about the meeting was the bell.
And I will have to give you credit on the bell ringing. You have a soft ring, and then you have a I'm ringing it for the second time ring, and they're very
Yeah.
distinctive. So you do try to give someone a soft ring on the first time, and if they keep going, then it's time
Yep.
for the harder ring.
I try to be nice a little bit. I appreciate that recognition on that. All right. So, if you could think about somebody starting, because you started in B9 not all that long ago, if you take yourself back to when you very first started and now you're in someone else's shoes, they're a new member, what would you tell them about building trust and reputation in their network?
Building trust and reputation, I mean, you have to follow through with what you say you're going to do. So, your reputation is built by your actions, in my opinion. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. So always make sure that you are doing what you say you're going to do it promptly. And if you can't do it, tell someone that you can't do it, because nobody wants to hear, I'll get that done for you, to turn around and then it didn't get done. So
Yeah, that's a big thing. Especially when you're new in a chapter that nobody knows, anything about you, then your word is your mandate, what you do or don't do kind of colors what's coming in the future. And that also colors what you may or may not receive, because if you're slow with me, then you're probably going to be slow with my client. Or if you don't deliver, to me, you're probably not going to deliver to my client. So that means maybe my client's not coming your way. So that's good. I like that. All right. And this is if you could think about yourself and go back to, I think you went right from school to becoming an attorney. That was your intention, right?
correct. Yeah, I went
Yeah.
straight from undergrad all the way through law school, and then I started working shortly thereafter.
And you come from a family of attorneys.
I do. I had
So,
grandfather and father.
okay. So if you were to do it all over again, and let's say the family, they were doing other things, they weren't attorneys, would you do the same thing over again, or would you be tempted to do something?
That's a hard question to answer because it takes a lot to get here.
All right.
Knowing what I know now, yes, I would do it again. Ask me, year two into my career, having been through several years of school and you still kind of don't know what you're doing and you're trying to understand and learn the role that you're in. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to get settled and to get comfortable. And, again, with some of my personality traits and strengths, I like routine, I like consistency, and it takes a long time to find that little niche where you can get into that rut and do the same thing and do it well. So, but yes, to answer your question, I would do it again.
You would do it again. I actually think if I had to do it all over again, I mean, I think I've lived several lifetimes because there's so many different things that interest me. But being an attorney was one of the things I always felt like I would enjoy doing because I have high influence. My influence is not woo, but I enjoy moving things along and kind of getting things accomplished in a different way. I always thought being an attorney would be a fun thing to be, although the school part kinda is a that's a long haul that I don't know that I would wanna make.
It's several years for sure.
Yeah. Alright, so as you look ahead in your business, the community, your family, what excites you most about the kind of impact you wanna make?
I don't know that I've ever given thought to that. I mean, each day I wake up and I have probably my family, and the future of what will become for my children, and I always try to make sure that I'm planning ahead so that they'll be well taken care of. And it's there's no perfect answer to that question, but I'm always looking ahead and trying to plan out, where will I be? Will I have enough to take care of what I need to take care of? And trying to balance having fun while getting there.
Are there any future attorneys in the mix there, upcoming?
My oldest has expressed some interest. He is still in high school, so it's a little premature for him to make that decision, with 100% certainty, but he has expressed interest, so we will see, how it plays out.
All right. All right. Well, now we're going to go into our quick fire lightning round. So these are just fun questions where you can answer just quick answers, minute, 2 minutes. All right. You ready?
Ready.
All right. So if BNI had a Hall of Fame for members, what would you want to be remembered for?
Improving.
Okay. And what's something people are surprised to learn about you outside of work?
I love music, and I can pretty much turn anything you say into a song. There's a lyric somewhere out there, and it's my brain is full of unnecessary, useful lyrics that I will constantly pull and pluck and start singing a song when I'm in a conversation with somebody.
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask you to sing one at the end. No, I'm just kidding. Alright, and speaking of a song, what song would play if the courtroom doors opened and you were walking in? What would be your kind of walk-up song?
All I do is win.
Okay. Nice. And what is your pre-court or pre-closing routine? Any rituals that help get you in the zone?
Pre-closing routine, I always look at what I'm about to have the client sign. I will flip through the settlement statement and I will make sure that nothing on it looks unusual to me that I need to ask my closer about prior to. Because sometimes it has happened where I'll sit down with a client and then I have a question internally that I could have asked before I walked in the room. So I've learned
Right.
to check my own self before I go in there so that I don't have to do that in front of the client. But that's probably about
Okay, nice. And if you were planning the perfect Saturday with your family, what's first on the list?
sleeping in,
I had a feeling you were gonna say
a long
that.
morning of coffee.
And who's been a key mentor or influencer in your life, and what's one lesson they taught you that you'll never forget?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm gonna have to say my parents on this one. I have a really good mother and a really good father, and they have taught me values. They taught me to appreciate what I have, and just the smallest of life lessons were taught from day one. So it helped mold me into who I am today. Something as small as if there's a peppermint laying on a counter and it's not yours, don't take it. Even if it's something trivial. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And what's one small daily habit that keeps you staying positive or grounded?
one small daily habit. my cup of coffee in the morning. I don't.
Again, I thought you might say that.
I love a cup of coffee if you can't tell.
Yeah, if your perfect Saturday includes a lot of coffee, I was gonna say that's probably coming. All right. And what's something that never fails to make you laugh, even on a hard day?
Oh wow. My family, my children, having 4 boys, you don't ever know what they're gonna say.
Right?
There are jokes for days, and I thought I knew them all, but boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, they can come up with some stuff, right? All right. And the last one is finish this sentence. Success to me looks like.
A well-balanced life, having time for the things that you wanna do and the things that you have to do.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Reese, for showing up and showing us how consistency, connection, and community can work hand in hand in business, in law, and in life. It was great having you here.
Yeah, I appreciate being here. This was, I was a little anxious at first, but this was, very enjoyable, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And for our listeners, remember whether you're building a firm, a network, or a reputation, your strengths are your greatest advantage. If today's episode inspired you, head to theperfect100.com or tammyzurak.com and go ahead and get your own Clifton Strengths done. And if you want to understand what it means and how to apply it in your life, you can talk to me about coaching. And before you go, please hit the subscribe button and share this episode with your chapter and help to keep us growing towards the perfect 100. Bye everybody. Thanks for listening to The Perfect 100. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to show up differently in your chapter, share it with your team and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you're curious about your own Clifton Strengths and how to bring out the best in yourself or your chapter or your business, head to tammyzurak.com to learn more about building your superpowers into everything you do. Keep showing up, keep connecting, and keep building your perfect 100.